Hello, everyone, and welcome to SAP Industries Live, Leading with Innovation, an ongoing series exploring how companies in more than 20 industries are adapting and transforming in the wake of enormous changes. My name is Bob Evans. I'm delighted to be the moderator for this SAP Industries Live series. Today's virtual event will focus on the fast-changing telco industry and the huge changes being triggered by the rollout of 5G. To discuss those dynamic transformations, we have two excellent speakers. From SAP, Sandeep Chowdhury is Senior Director of the Telco Business Unit. From the partner side, Doug Gadaloff is Executive Partner with IBM's SAP Center of Excellence. And of course, you, the audience, are welcome participants in the conversation. We hope you use the chat feature on your screen to share your questions and comments. Over the past 20 months, every industry has been rocked by enormous changes. And the telco industry has companies in there that are being challenged both internally and externally. We're going to take a look at some of those challenges today, including the need for these companies to develop new business models, their need to update legacy IT systems, the need to develop new revenue models, and also the significant need for them to harness the power and potential of Industry 4.0. Well, Sandeep, that sounds like a pretty aggressive agenda, and you get to speak with telco companies from across the world. How are they handling all this disruption?
Thank you, Bob. So first of all, we need to start challenging the basic premise itself. What is really a telco? I mean, the classical definition would be someone who took a license to operate in a certain telco jurisdiction, installed towers, and then had a duopoly situation with another telco, or maybe a monopoly, or maybe a slightly more oligopoly or tripoly, whatever. But if you see, that is not the way the industry is operating currently. First of all, some of the most common sources of revenues for telco over the years, the first decade when they went live after GSM came, was SMS, was international calling. And where do they stand now? So OTTs have replaced quite a lot of that. So important thing to realize is that most of the competitors are going to be outside the industry. It is not the other telco next doors. It is different way of working with other industry players, broadening your horizon. And some of the examples I can quote is, in one way, as I mentioned, in extending the boundaries to changing the reference frame itself by operating marketplaces, by using your huge retail strength into offering something more than telco services, offering digital content, like app centers, etc., bringing enormous revenues. And also very important is the future dimension with Industry 4.0 manufacturing players, what a telco could bring to this new value chain, going much beyond connectivity, looking into the B2B2X market, and finally coming back to the consumer market itself. I mean, the game is not over there. If you see the T-Mobile in US with its Un-carrier approach, or Jio in India, two large telcos offering two radically different solutions to tackle the same problem, to how to extend the revenue stream, how to extend the consumer base, and by playing a different game altogether.
Sandeep, thank you. And Doug, it's interesting, Sandeep pointed to a number of issues there about this need to drive new revenue. Again, some of the work that you're doing here, what's your sense of the ability of telco companies to harness all this change to help them move into new areas for revenue growth?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. It's interesting. I mean, I work with a number of different customers around the world in telcos, and I think probably one of the biggest surges in demand I'm seeing at the moment for new revenue is with private 5G networks. Right, so yeah, great example. I've got a customer at the moment who has installed a private 5G network inside their warehouse, right, and they've then installed IoT sensors on their forklift trucks. And what they're able to do is they're able to the square foot, optimize the movement of those forklift trucks inside the warehouse. Right? And that's the whole new model. And there's such a massive amount of those style customers out there where these private 5G networks could play a big part. I suppose another really good customer example I'm seeing, and it's been around for a while, but the whole use of AI to reduce the demand on the cost base. But what I'm seeing is it's being spun around and moving away from things like chatbots for the telcos to the self-service apps right, that the telcos can have, and they integrate with like your calendar on your phone, so they can actually proactively determine that, say your calendar says you're leaving the country next week, and so it tries to upsell you a data roaming package. Now, there's a few little tricky things there when it comes to opting in and opting out and GDPR and all that kind of good stuff. But as a new revenue stream, there's a massive amount out there. And then I suppose similarly, when it comes to monetizing customer data, now once again another tricky one. Selling customer data is sounds a bit taboo, but if it's done sensibly and legally with GDPR, etc., and the telcos have tremendous value in that data they hold when it comes to new revenue.
Doug, I really like those two examples you did, right? Because you typically, I think, we look at things like a forklift and say, well, okay, we just don't want it to break or, keep that thing moving. And you're talking about applying intelligence to this. So not only is it moving, doing its job, but now it can be optimized. And your same point here about flipping the notion of AI from being a cost reduction tool, which is great, but also now how does it come in and not just help boost revenue, but it seems like what you're saying here is give customers more of what they want, or the consumer more with that, more self-control over things and the ability to be in charge of the experience.
Yeah, it takes a bit more, Bob, to actually have. It's not as simple as just doing that, right? With a self-serve app, you've got to have the back ends lined up so the contracts get issued automatically, and it's a seamless process for the customer. But there's a lot of ducks paddling under the water to make that work on the IT side.
I can point to some interesting example because it's actually a joint work which we did with IBM and a couple of customers. So the traditional premise was that there is the website or the app on your phone, but the AI is new player in the game. And you have to understand it from the AI perspective alone. Things like chatbots, conversational assistants. First of all, they are very critical to a telco customer journey because telco business is services business. It's operating with the existing customers, offer them high quality services as well as assist them whenever needed. And AI, whether it's conversational assistants or chatbots, are absolutely critical to this. But there is, of course, a challenge to this. These systems have their own logic, own semantic logic of operating. You need to give them certain amount of flexibility. So some of the prototypes we built, some of the use cases we built with IBM was all around this topic on how to ensure the full flexibility to these new tools while offering some kind of guideline for the customer journeys that it could take place.
Sandeep, that's interesting how you framed that perspective there, because one of the issues that I think you've been very passionate about is the whole onset of Industry 4.0, right? So this enormous range of potential coming in. What's your sense of how companies in the telco industry are, connecting in with Industry 4.0 and making that a core part of their new strategy?
Yes, of course, coming from a supply chain company which is focused on manufacturing, it's of course a key topic which we took. But we need to understand that Industry 4.0 is not just about connecting applications, connecting factories, connecting processes, connecting experts. It's also the quality of connectivity which matters. And the use cases will be radically different if it is requiring high latency, like some of the examples Doug was giving earlier, or if it is, let's say, a traditional old-fashioned latency. What is also important to remember that in the context of Industry 4.0, with the cloud computing, big data was playing a role. With the Industry 4.0, it is the edge computing, the intelligence at the edge, the instant data, which is playing a critical role. And the difference between the cloud computing and here is, in the old world of cloud computing, telcos were slowly getting disintermediated. But whereas in the Industry 4.0, with these IoT applications at the edge, telcos have a role to play. I mean, they are the critical player here in the Industry 4.0, offering the backbone of connectivity to connect everything together.
Great. So I just want to remind the audience, we'd love to hear your comments and questions here for Sandeep and Doug. And Doug, one of the points that you referenced earlier too is about, again, in this fast-changing business, you've talked a little bit about how media companies and telco companies are in some ways, pursuing some similar sorts of business models or new approaches. Talk to us a little bit, Doug, please, about what you're seeing with bundling of services now.
Yeah. No, good one. Good point. I suppose fundamental to bundling, is that telcos these days are more than just telcos, right? They're a retail company, they're a media company, they're a high-tech company, and they're a telco, and probably a lot more, financial services even sometimes these days. So I suppose the ability to sell a broad range of products and bundle products is continually growing, right? So maybe I'll get another good example, right? So most telcos these days offer quad play. Now, quad play, in the market, relates to selling a bundle of a mobile phone, or a cell phone, a fixed line, a TV, broadband as part of a bundle. Right? That's your typical telco bundle you get out there, and and not all consumers buy that. But if you add on the ability to cross sell and to upsell, say something like a movie package bundle. With some associated retail merchandise, a coffee mug of the Incredible Hulk, for example, right? Or even amusement park tickets. That's all can be all part of a bundle, or a Netflix, Amazon, or Disney Plus subscription. And what you end up getting, and what we're seeing in the market, is you end up selling bundles of bundles. Right? You can imagine, like I said, there's a Netflix bundle, you can get an amusement park bundle, you get a quad play, and that can be a bundle in itself. So I kind of like to call them multi-tiered bundled selling. So you get bundles of bundles, and at any point you can take a part of that. And all of these bundles can be purchased under a subscription model.
Doug, is that something that you think is coming quickly here? Is that being taken up? Because you described it here before. Look at some of these telco companies, right? It's almost a misnomer to say they're telco companies, because they're media companies, they're tech companies, and other sorts of things. So I think on the consumer side, we just see an enormous demand for this sort of subscription level bundling. So what's your sense of the pace at which this is developing in this business?
Yeah, look, you take myself, right, as a consumer, 3 teenagers, and they're subscribers to just about everything you can possibly imagine, right? So, and we recently upgraded our own internal house to where our main provider, we get Netflix and Amazon and Disney Plus all through them. So all these OTT providers are selling through each other. Uh-huh. So it's not just sell to, it's sell through. And I think that's the way. There's plenty of pie to go around, and it's not just complete competition. You can resell each other's products and services, and those products are bundled products.
Perfect. Sandeep, we had a question from the audience I wanted to share with you. Beyond telco, which industries do you see the most active 5G momentum?
Well, I think the immediate benefits would be coming from the manufacturing industries. Some of the most common use cases we are seeing from the manufacturing players, like the private 5G campus network, which Doug was mentioning, used by manufacturing providers. And that is where we are seeing a lot of innovation happening.
And Sandeep, let me follow up on that, because in an earlier conversation, I know you had brought up an interesting point in which you're talking about how with this onset of 5G and this need for the telco businesses to innovate along so many fronts, you've talked about this idea of a virtual telecom service. Why is that important, and how will that help telco companies move more quickly into the future?
Yes, so let me take a step back, Bob. So that is anchored on a specific work which we are doing together with IBM. The idea was to bring together the SAP portfolio, which is together with the industry cloud platform, represents a relatively complete business applications portfolio for the industry, and combine it with IBM from the infrastructure perspective as well as from the services and solutions. And the two problems we started attacking in the industry immediately was beginning with the customer experience, where we gained significant tractions in the last few years, and then moving on to monetization, which is our current offering we are working with IBM on. And our 5G work is related to that. So we are working with TM Forum, which is an important industry standards body, on an important innovation case with Deutsche Telekom. So a typical example which I could give you is the classical belief would be a telco operates in its own jurisdiction. So when a manufacturing player comes, you offer its service based on your capabilities. But what we are seeing is the need for telcos to operate not only beyond the jurisdiction, but also within the same jurisdiction. If there is a competitor with whom you can enter into a cooperative situation and create a kind of virtual entity where you can provide consolidated services which benefits the end consumers, end consumer, which is a manufacturing player, which could be also another industrial player. And to build that kind of a solution, infrastructure based on customer experience as well as monetization in order to do that. And to bring the 5G into the picture, 5G is important here because with 5G comes network slicing, where telcos can have, where different players can have their own isolated slices, where they operate with certain amount of privacy as well as their specific needs. Whereas all this could be addressed with the same amount of latency or scalability which the telco could provide to the larger economy. So it is a very interesting case. So there will be new business models coming, but we are very happy to work on a specific industry problem together with IBM and Deutsche Telekom.
Yeah, fascinating, how quickly those, Sandeep, this notion of partnerships and right in the old days, it was sort of like a company like SAP would make it, the partners would sell it, the customers would buy it. And now it seems that, you've got all those different stakeholders in there are all getting more and more into this notion of co-creation. And it's really leading to some, I think, higher levels of innovation on a shorter duration, right? So again, this pace of innovation is extraordinarily fast right now. Question from the audience. Which telco capabilities will be important in the new 5G driven B2B world? Doug, and then Sandeep, what do you think?
Yeah, just from my own experience, right? So I mentioned that earlier example about the private network inside the warehouse, but it's probably not a direct answer, but I think the most important thing is the ability to deploy it quickly. Yeah. People and consumers have very limited attention spans when it comes. If something goes wrong, they're happy to change, right? If the cell tower in downtown London isn't working, they switch, right? So, and that's notorious in my part of the world. So I think the ability to deploy those 5G networks and make them dependable, and if they're private networks, they better work first time. If the more broader consumer networks, it's reliability. It's what's important.
I will add to this, so there is, of course, the explicit capability of telco being a network owner and providing network capabilities, which is important. But let's not forget, there is also, let's say, more implicit values which a telco brings. Things like billing, charging, CRM, some of the smaller players would not have all that. Going beyond that, throughout the ecosystem, telcos have their own existing network of customers, so a typical use case would be if you want to have a marketplace, then you have to go beyond your own set of customers and partners. So telco in larger countries have these entire networks ready. So these business capabilities, apart from IT capabilities, these are all important apart from the network capabilities, which is why a telco exists.
Doug, one other question from the audience here. They want to know, they heard about some of the new billing systems. I'm wondering how long do these take to implement?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, some of the big billing providers out there, Amdocs, Netcracker, for example, are a massive undertaking for any big telco. It's the heart of the telco are those consumer bills, and some of these massive billing systems can take up to 2 years to implement. What we're finding with SAP is if a telco is looking to move away from a traditional incumbent biller, it can take as anything as little as 6 months up to about sort of 15 months to make that change, depending on the scale. It depends, but the quickest we've seen the SAP billing systems implemented, broadly across the telcos, it's been 6 months. Typically, it's 9 months, but it's nowhere near is it the 2 years that telcos used to do with the big products, big competitors out there.
Yeah, those time frames, 2 years. I mean, the way things are going now, it's going to be a totally different world 2 years from now. And so you finish the project, but the project might not have the relevance that was required, early when you started that. So I think, again, we see that this pace of change is just striking here. And I wanted to follow up on that, Doug. So you're with IBM, focusing in the SAP Center of Excellence. And you touched on this a little in your last answer, but we see companies in so many industries, they need to move faster. They need to innovate on a broader scale more quickly. They need to move in sync with their customers and anticipate almost where the customers are headed. So I wanted to ask, what's your view from the IBM side of why SAP might be uniquely qualified to help telcos adapt with all this change and disruption?
Yeah, I mean, let me expand on what I was saying a minute ago. SAP is different to your traditional telco billers that really have had a market monopoly almost. The 2 or 3 big players that have been out there. The reason SAP is different is because the software is highly configurable. Right? You don't need IT programmers to program software changes. You set it up with switches and flags, and that allows end users then to make changes. So in SAP, you can easily accommodate all that multi-tiered product bundles I was talking about before, because it's all about the speed of change, right? So with SAP, you can easily change a price change for a telco, for a product. You can easily set up a new product because of this ability to configure it. So with SAP billing system, you can actually do changes in a matter of minutes by an end user, as opposed to sort of weeks and months by your IT department or by one of these incumbent billing systems. And that's a lot of the time. That's a lot of what IBM and SAP have been working on together, right? So one of the big announcements we made recently, a few months ago, was what we called SAP Brim Billing as a Service, and that really is all about IBM and SAP bringing to market something that is highly competitive and much faster and much more agile to use and operate as a billing system when it comes to price change, when it comes to new products being deployed, versus the traditional players like Amdocs and Netcracker.
Yeah. Sandeep, what's your perspective on that?
Yes, I think we are definitely looking forward to this partnership. And it is important to understand that SAP has not been exclusively focused on telco industry alone with its billing solution. We have been focused on 25 other industries: finance, fashion, banking, all kind of use cases. So when we talk about telcos breaking the boundaries, so all this experience comes quite handy together with the partnership which IBM offers in building together, build an outcome-based offering towards the end customer.
Well, Sandeep, too, that the point you mentioned there about the 25 industries that SAP has been in for decades. Now, it's unique that SAP's approach to this whole notion of industry-specific solutions or industry clouds, SAP's been very specific about saying, no, we're going to make that singular, an industry cloud, because SAP believes there will be capabilities that can be used across industries. So how do you see that playing out in the telco space?
So I will try to give a very simple answer here. So the industry cloud is trying to do 3 things. First, to bring to the end customer, a telco provider in our case, certain type of industry capabilities which he needs, which could not be probably fulfilled by SAP alone. And the second thing would be to connect it to the existing ecosystem, using all kind of middleware technologies, offer integration, because integration is a key benefit of industry cloud. In order to scale, you need to have integration to a number of multiple systems. You need to have a certain way of working where you can work with multiple pairs. So the second thing would be to work with, to connect them all together with the ecosystem. And the final thing, let's not forget, the telco industry requires certain amount of scale, and that can come with only cloud-based applications. So we are razor focused on new cloud-based players, niche players. So they could be small, in order to connect them all together into the ecosystem and to build an outcome-based cloud solution for the industry. So that's all the industry cloud for us is all about.
I'd actually add one more comment there as well, Bob. I mean, of all industries, I had a conversation only last week with a professional services company, and the opening comment they made was, "We want to do all of our sort of billing with a telco operating model in mind, right? So they were thinking about, how do I bundle my products from a professional services perspective? I'll space that. I think media companies I can get, and even electronic companies I can get, but professional services. So it's a whole change in mindset as to how the different industries are looking to telcos as how they've done it in the past, in the same way telcos looking to cross industries as to how they've done things in the past as well.
So, gentlemen, you've brought up these a series of changes here, right? Talked about the impact. Excuse me. Industry 4.0. You've got this incredible new technology of 5G coming in. I think, Sandeep, it was you, or perhaps it was Doug, that talked about it's no longer just B2B over here and B2C over here, but I think somebody said B2B to X. These new models are coming in. I also hear a number of companies across different industries say that they see a real breakdown in this traditional notion of front office, middle office, back office, right? That everybody's trying to get a connection of data across those, because those are internal constructs, right? From the past, the customer says, look, I want a great product or service from your company, and I want to maybe help be part of the development of that. I want to reach into what you used to call the back office. So all these changes coming together here, I think, are going to knock down some of these traditional ways we've thought about things, that companies aren't going to have a front, middle, and back office anymore. And is 5G, do you think that's true? And two, Sandeep, will 5G help accelerate those changes?
I think definitely. Traditionally the accepted model, as you said, was system of engagement and historic record. I believe Gartner had coined it, but it does not operate like that. The world is far more complex, and you need to rewrite the old rules in order to operate in the new world. And what 5G is definitely bringing is a number of different players to the industry. So you are not just dealing with end consumers and offering them services. It's also devices, services connected to devices, the factories, the industrial players. So 5G is definitely bringing a fundamental change to things like how a telco should operate, not just in terms of connectivity, how you manage the data, how you manage the interaction, how you manage the monetization or the billing. So there are different problems we are trying to solve.
Gentlemen, great conversation here. I'd like to offer a chance for each of you to share a final thought on things, or sort of pull things together. Doug, how about if we start with you, and then Sandeep will come over to you.
Yeah, I suppose, Bob, I've worked in different sort of SIs over the years, and the one thing I love about IBM and the way we're doing things here is providing that sort of full end-to-end spectrum. So the customers have the opportunity to sort of buy from IBM sort of the full end-to-end suite. So from software and support to implementation services to application management services to cloud hosting, service level agreements underpinning it all as one big package. And we do that with SAP ourselves. So it makes it a very easy way to go to market and the way for customers to purchase from ourselves and SAP, especially with the fantastic product we've got available through SAP and their billing system. Sandeep?
Doug, are you doing subscription-based services, bundles?
I will tell you, IBM was one of the first companies. IBM Corporation, was one of the first companies to actually buy SAP's subscription billing system, and we use it for our distributed software group to bundle the software components differently. So yes, we are.
Perfect. Thank you, Sandeep.
Yes, so I will start by saying that change is the new normal, but to manage the change, you need to have something more permanent. And the SAP IBM relationship has been quite stable over the years. We have addressed several industry problems, as I said, beginning with customer experience. Now, monetization and billing is the one where we are razor focused on, and here we are delivering a kind of outcome-based solution, billing as a service, but also looking at the larger picture of the entire business support system. So we are definitely looking forward to working on that in the coming year.
Great. Thanks. And before we go, Sandeep, just had a final question come in from the audience. Doris wants to know, how is SAP's roadmap in terms of billing systems in the telco industry? Is SAP convergent charging still the core system for rating and charging, or will there be a new proposal like subscription billing?
So it's a very specific question, and roadmap is always subject to change. But we are proceeding with convergent charging. It's used by some of the major telcos in the world. It will still play a major role in our arsenal. Subscription billing is an additional product which is addressing some specific situations on how to onboard a new service with a low time to market and low cost to market. So both of them are important.
Great. Well, Sandeep, Doug, thank you so much for a great conversation here. And to all of you folks in the audience, thanks for being with us here for this SAP Industries Live discussion. We've taken a look at what's going on in the telco industry. You can find out more about this on the SAP's LinkedIn Live page. And also on behalf of the SAP Telco business unit, just want to thank all of you for being with us. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.